And we're live. Welcome to the Strength Syndicate Podcast, episode number 6, with myself, Shane Story, and my co-host, Lawrence King. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Iron Ian Grant, the Iron Mindset, Mr. Abs, Mr. Flyfit himself. Join us today to run us through the beginner's guide to powerlifting, basically. Okay, so Ian, how are you getting on?
I am fantastic. Am I the first person to receive so many titles in the introduction? Because I feel privileged right now. I enjoyed that.
You deserve it, man. Especially you did win the Mr. Flyfit competition last year. Abs Series 4 was the Mr. Flyfit competition.
Yeah, you're going to remember that one for a while now, given that you came second. But that's all right. I guess I think that's still a good place. But that was actually that was a good comp. I am doing great, boys, and I do really appreciate just taking the time to have me on. So thank you very much. I'm loving what you're doing. It's really, really good.
Come here, that's all great, but I'm completely out of the fucking loop here. What the fuck is Mr. Flyefit, boys? Come
on. Basically, me and Ian were in a bit of a competition last year to see who was the king of Flyefit. While I was working there, he's also working in the swords Flyefit, and we just wanted to see who was going to be the strongest person in the company. But unfortunately, Ian won.
Weight category.
I did indeed, yes. And Shane soon left the company after that.
Not a coincidence.
Probably left his tail between his legs after losing that. Same weight category.
No, I would say at the time, no, definitely not. I think you were quite light for that comp, if I recall. You were like 86, 87?
89.
Oh, 89. Okay. I think I was about 95. So no, you were definitely a fair bit lighter. And you hit some real nice numbers in there, man, as far as I recall. And that was one of the things that actually kept me going for that comp, was knowing that your training was going really well. I was like, this guy is already way more aesthetic than me. I can't let him beat me now. You know what I mean? So it was good. It lit the fire under my ass. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a very good competition. And I suppose I'll have to qualify for the Pro-Am now in August, and
has to happen.
I'll have another crack at beating you. But yeah, so thank you for coming on to the podcast. So I suppose we want to touch on some kind of specifics related to powerlifting and how a beginner could get into powerlifting. But I think a really good reason why we got you onto the podcast was you went from being a beginner to being like quite an advanced powerlifter, or quite a seasoned competitor now. So you've competed in pretty much all of the Ab Series events.
Mm-hmm.
So in quite 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So the first one was April 2019, and the most recent one then was April 2021.
Yeah. So do you want to talk us through a bit of your kind of experience of, say, before powerlifting? So how you even got interested in strength training, and then your kind of journey into getting into powerlifting competitions?
Sure, absolutely. I will warn you, strap in. I will try not to deviate too far off the point, but I will be as concise as I can while providing as much detail. So
we want the audience to see us delving deep.
Savage, boys. All right, settle in now. Here we go. And if you have any questions along the way, please do jump in. So this is like when I was a kid, 16 years old, I started pro wrestling. So for those that don't know, pro wrestling is the same stuff you would have seen on TV, the WWE, the WWF. I did that for 10 years of my life. All right. So this was me and my friends traveling up and down the country, planning out matches and slamming each other wearing our tights. You know what I mean? That was what our whole gig was for years. And that was a lot of what my life centered around in my young adult years. And then, I grew up, I stopped doing it around 2014. I had some mild injuries I was taking time off from. And then over time, that just became less and less and less of a thing that I wanted to go back to. And I was really, really starting to enjoy the gym more. We always trained with wrestling. We did a lot of squats. Jesus, we used to have there was one trainer his whole buzz, you had to do 200 squats and 100 push-ups before you could ever get in the ring. So I was quite experienced with squats, let's just say, at least bodyweight squats. And then, so a friend of mine gave me a gym program. This is maybe 2011. I started doing that on and off. He was a good guy, really good trainer, introduced me to squat, bench, deadlift. His program is very concise. I think it was literally squat, bench, deadlift, row, chin up, and overhead press. So real basic. And off the back of that, I built a pretty decent base. I started getting really into fitness, as I mentioned, as I came to the end of my time in wrestling. I got really into YouTube fitness. I used to love Elliot Hulst, you know, the biggest bro of them all. I thought that his whole shtick with Strength Camp was really cool. So I was into that. And I really liked the idea then, as I moved away from wrestling, competing in something that was a bit more tangible and actual competition, instead of, you know, pretending to slam your mates, actually beating somebody at something. So moving on a little bit from there, I decided I wanted to qualify as a PT. I had spoken to the same guy that gave me a program. He had said, look, man, you know, you're training well, you know your stuff. Why not get involved with this side of it? So I went and got qualified. I actually did that through Image Fitness. Course was good. Some of the instructors are good. I'm sure you guys know most PT courses are really two-dimensional. They're just tipping off a lot of different bits and pieces. But I knew from there I was very interested in the likes of powerlifting and strongman. So I came to work in Flyefit then in 2017. And while I was there, I met a guy named Ben Kelly. Ben was a GPC powerlifter, and I would do a bit of training with him. So every Monday I would go in and squat with Ben, usually in the morning, and he would just beat the shit out of us. Like it was great crack, but like I loved the camaraderie of it, because it was himself, myself, and another guy named Eddie that worked there too. 3 guys were trained together. People would come and like watch us train. You know what I mean? We thought we were, you know, the big boys with our like 170 banded box squats. You know what I mean? They run West Side from out of Ben's gym. So I did a little bit of that for a while. That was good. Then I kind of started to decide, this is coming into 2018 now, I guess. I really decided I wanted to compete in something. And I started to like look around Ireland to see what we did here. And I knew there was a bit of strongman. I knew there was a bit of powerlifting. And I knew there was a bit of CrossFit. And there was a good few CrossFitters in our gym. Now, I will preface this by saying I never actually competed in CrossFit realistically. But Flyefit started hosting this CrossFit event called the Flyefit Games, originally enough. And I jumped in on that for the crack one year, and that was a bit of fun. So I started to do a little bit of, I suppose, the most generic version of strength and conditioning you could imagine. I did 2 barbell movements a session, and then a nice big load of conditioning at the end. So like flipping a tire, pushing a sled, jumping on the rower, whatever you want. That's how I made up my volume. I actually got in pretty good shape doing it. I got pretty strong. I finished out 2018 by pulling 280 on the deadlift, on bumper plates, mind you. But still, at that stage, I was like, right, I think I'm getting to the stage now. I want to do something. And at that point, I think I had seen, I tell you what it was, Mark Stell, Barbell Stell, or the strongest praying mantis junior in Irish powerlifting, unbelievable athlete. He started training with us in Flyefit. He was working there for a very short period of time, and he kept mentioning that he was a member of ABS. I followed ABS on Instagram then as well, and I had decided from there I definitely want to compete in something. I believe we're almost there, boys. Don't worry. We get to January 2019. And I believe it's around then, I saw the ad go up for AB series, the first ever AB series. So I said, to hell with it, I'll sign up. Threw my name in, had not a breeze what it was about, just said, I knew it was squat, I knew it was bench, I knew it was deadlift. So I'm going to start training that way for the next little while. I had actually, prior to this, messaged a lot of different, I messaged like a couple of federations over here, and a couple of different places that did powerlifting or had powerlifting equipment, asking about like joining or getting some guidance or coaching. And the only ones that actually got back to me were ABS. It was actually Jay Farrant messaged me back and sent me like a series of voice messages. I asked him a question about joining and about bench press, and he took the time to send me about 6 minutes of voice messages explaining what I need to do for bench. And anyone that knows Jay knows that's remarkable. You know what I mean? That he gave that much time. But that kind of sold me that, you know, ABS is a good spot. Everyone that trained there seemed to say it was really good. So I went down to watch an IPF comp February that year. Mark competed and won his category. Great guy. That was Kean Madden was there too. It was actually Kean was the first person I compared what I was doing to. I was like, okay, he's lifting this, lifting that. I reckon I could do something similar to him. So he won his category, so I must be decent. Kean has since skyrocketed past me. I'll just say he's a incredibly strong guy. So roll around March, I come down to ABS to join up. I met Jake Brennan there, who I actually knew from when we went to school, ironically. There's a shocking number of lads and ladies from where I went to school around that time that are all either in powerlifting or strongman or something, or fighting. There must have been something in the water, like, you know what I mean? But it was a good group of people. So Jake and I did a small bit of training together. He talked me through some of the things for powerlifting, gave me some advice, rocked up to ab series in my CrossFit knee sleeves, and nearly killed myself on my third squat. But that was my first soiree into powerlifting, and it was obviously very good because I keep coming back. I think what really got me on the day was that I had joined abs a week prior, and Davidas, one of the coaches in abs, who I knew peripherally through friends, handled me for the whole day, as well as like 7 other lifters. But I never felt at any stage like I was alone. I was like, you know what, this is it, boys. This is the one. This is the guy, and this is the place. So that was my first ever experience in powerlifting. So that takes me from how I first ever started training all the way up to that. So thanks for sitting through that, boys.
That was pretty epic.
Thank you.
How did you get on in the second competition?
Not as well, but I think that was due to a number of factors. That you competed at that one too, actually, and you did really, really well. You got more points than me at that one, if I recall correctly, actually.
That would be correct.
You did really well at that one, actually. But that one was, I liked certain. So the second comp was interesting because they changed a lot of the equipment we were using. We used the Kabuki bar for everything. We had to walk out our squats, which I preferred at the time, and I was really happy with how my squat went. I think it was 132.5 at the time in sleeves. I was really, really happy with that, because squat was one of the things, as I came into powerlifting, I didn't really think I was a great squatter, and I thought it was like a mediocre bencher, but I had a good deadlift. And ironically, this competition went the whole other way. I was happy with my squat. I hit 150 on the bench for the first time, and I absolutely shit the bed on my third deadlift. I think I went out to pull 270 and just couldn't get it off the ground. I think what I had done wrong in that period of time was I had been running the abs program like outside of the gym myself, and I was not really listening to the advice I was getting. I was assuming I knew what to do, because when I was programming myself, I deadlifted maybe twice a week, whereas I think this had like 3 to 4 deadlift variations in it. And I was trying to max out all of them. Like these, you know, the way there was actually a time back in the day we had 3x6 on deadlift on a Tuesday. And I think the first day, like 2 days after my first comp, I was trying to pull 220 for 6. And like my eyes were bloodshot and my face was going beetroot red. And Mark Stell walked in and said, what are you doing? I'm like, what are you even training for? So I think that my problem there was actually not understanding how powerlifting programming worked. And that has been one of the best things on iteration, is understanding how these things go. So I definitely feel like, just to bring it around to like how people would step into this sport, you'll oftentimes see, I think they like that. They think powerlifting is just go hard all the time on every single lift. So that's one thing I've since learned, which was a good experience.
No, I think that's a very definitive learning outcome for someone. And it's kind of packets in the fire that I think you do need to go through. And Shane have kind of spoken a lot about the benefit of going to that RP of 10, or figuring out like for yourself, like I'm burning the candle at both ends here. And while it's not efficacious in its training outcomes, it is beneficial in learning, okay, if I go to this place, I am going to crucify myself. And it's for what you're saying there, you obviously, it mightn't have been something that might have just clicked for you straight away, but obviously from being an environment of around powerlifters and good powerlifters at that, you obviously got that when you needed it.
It was a good wake-up call for sure.
I think that's something as well you learn from training in a gym with other powerlifters as opposed to just training with yourself. Because when you're just training with yourself, and especially if you're doing it in like a commercial gym or something, like, you know, if you're like, not to be cocky, but if you're lifting like the weights that we would be lifting in a commercial gym, people do look at you, like, you know, and that does feed your ego, and that can force you to not make the smart decision when you are training. But you learn pretty quickly when you're training around people who are stronger than you, or in a powerlifting gym, that like it doesn't fucking matter like what you're lifting on that day. It's not gonna like it doesn't matter what you lift in the gym. It matters what you lift on the platform. So blowing your load and just trying to lift heavy for the sake of lifting heavy, and for the sake of beating the logbook, or to try get a gym PB. It doesn't really matter in the current context of things. And like, I mean, that's definitely something that I even still struggle with at times, you know, because you do kind of want to progress from block to block, but you have to also take into account you want to progress from meet to meet, not just block to block.
For sure.
So what was kind of the moment for you that kind of, obviously you're talking about that experience of the powerlifting meet, but obviously there was something there training wise that happened and that kind of captivated you or drew you towards powerlifting? What was it about the sport in of itself that kind of drew you in?
I suppose from taking the time on like working in a commercial gym setting, and everyone is super dialed and focused in on their aesthetic. Most of my clients are the same story. Everyone's obsessed with how they look. And the more I worked with people and the variety of people I worked with, I found that when we shifted the focus away from strictly how they looked and more about how they felt, about how they perform, and performance-based training in general, making them feel better and move better and feel better in themselves, regardless to what a scales might say, or, you know, if they have a six pack or not. I think that shift in focus, like that I was trying to give to my clients, started to happen to me. So I started to see more value in saying, well, you know, my body will tangibly change over time, whereas this is something that I can work on right now. So it's something that, like, you know, powerlifting is a fairly simple idea. It's very like simple movements that you can progress over time. They don't take an awful lot to practice. They don't take an awful lot of skill to learn. They can take a lot of skill to perfect, for sure. But I think the draw for me was firstly the competitive element, to give me something to train towards, because I found, especially in my first year and a half in personal training and working in a gym, I was very much focused on growing my business and securing a good spot for myself in Flyefit, working there. I since now work in management for the company as well, which has been a great experience too. But I was very much focused on becoming a good trainer first. And I noticed my own training started to suffer for it. And it was as I realized that I quite missed having something to train at. So previously would have been wrestling, we would have kept ourselves in shape, or, you know, we wouldn't, you know, have 8 pints of Guinness because, you know, we have a show on Friday and Saturday. But giving myself that back was actually a really, really big deal. So I suppose shifting the focus away from strictly aesthetics to something more performance-based, it's very, very simple to see the progress on. You know, I used to only be able to lift this weight for 2, and now I can lift it for 3, or I can lift it for 5. Was a really, really big deal for me and my clients too, as I mentioned. So I suppose that, and then also giving myself something to train at each time. So every time I finish a meet, I take a moment, I smell the roses, I'm happy, and say, okay, now when's the next thing? When's the next one? What can I work towards now? And ironically, by changing that focus, the aesthetic goals I would have had for myself previously are actually now coming to me more readily than they ever did before, when that was what my main focus was, you know? So that would be the big thing for me, is that by focusing on performance and being better at this thing, I've actually achieved more than when I was strictly focused on these extrinsic things, like how good looking I am or how fit I look, you know what I mean? Just trying to look like Shane, you know what I mean? When he's like 83 kilos and ripped, man, telling you.
Yeah, I think Shane's story is slowly becoming the male ideal. We're going to see kind of busts all over.
Very memeable face as well. Very good.
2,000 or 3,000 years time, when they're excavating the ground, see Shane's story personified in statues and bronze busts.
Them stairs.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky I get to look at them every week as well. So you were drawn in initially by the ability to compete, something that you saw you might have some ability towards, also that it was something which you could potentially get better at. I think that's kind of, I would be quite similar to that myself, that powerlifting is something that, like you were saying there just before we started recording, you could absolutely demoralize yourself by going on Instagram and looking at some 14.5-year-old squatting 250 kilos for a set of 12. But when you do kind of shrug that off and kind of realize, right, I'm not ever going to be an all-time world record holder, but I definitely have the capacity to get better. I think that's definitely something for beginners to take away as well is that even though they're not instantaneously squatting 300 kilos or pulling 3 or benching 3 plates, that regardless of what level they're at, there is an ability to progress.
Absolutely.
They adhere to a program and buy into sleeping well and staying away from the drink and the drugs and the women. I mean, there is a path forward in that.
I think as well, it allows you to become more process oriented as opposed to the outcome oriented. So you touched on the fact that you had like aesthetic goals in the past, and strength training and kind of being more kind of powerlifting focused as well, that helped you come to those a bit better. And because like, you know, muscle gain or hypertrophy is something that is so slow to take place. And like, you know, you could do your sets of bicep curls every day of the week, and the next week your bicep might not be any bigger, and the next month it might not be any bigger, because it happens over like it could take a year, 2 years for you to see real kind of proper change in that area. Whereas if you're focused on something like the squat, the bench and deadlift, especially movements that are kind of involve like multiple muscle groups, your capacity to change them and increase them over even a short time scale, like, is quite motivating in a sense, because you can see the progress a lot quicker, and then that the progress in those areas will contribute to, like, over time. Like, I mean, if you take your 100 kilo bench to 140 kilo bench, like, you will have some muscle mass to show for it.
Absolutely. But this, I suppose as well, there's so few barriers to participation in what it is, because the movements themselves are not, as I mentioned, they're not like tricky to learn. They're fairly basic, and that's why they're usually the first few things most trainers will teach, you know. So obviously there's a standard to meet, which is, I think most average people actually can. I think it just takes that little bit of coaching. So once you can do the movements to a standard and you can load a little bit of weight on the bar, you're pretty much good to go. Like, naturally, I'm sure most people prefer to feel comfortable enough to stand up on a stage in a singlet first, but I've without a doubt found in my time in powerlifting, because by proxy of me coming into it, I have since dragged in several of my colleagues and friends, and now I'm dragging my clients in as well, that I always say to them, when they kind of say, yeah, cool, okay, I'll do it, they'll do one to see what it's like, and then immediately say, okay, when can I do another one? You know what I mean? Because I think it's a period of time they can have where they're training towards a goal, and each session for them, they understand, it makes them more consistent with training. They want to train more regularly. There's something to train at, rather than, you know, an arbitrary goal like, you know, I just want to look better, which is something that, you know, takes a much longer period of time and a lot more investment. Whereas they can kind of, as you mentioned, become process orientated, which I think is vital for most people. It's those behavioral changes and having that motivation or that determination or something tangible like that. Like, okay, whether I like it or not, this date is coming. So I can slack now, but I'm going to pay for it on the day, or I can, you know, enjoy the process, try to improve these things over time, and the accumulation of all that will be on the platform on this day. So I really like that idea. And I think that really, really resonates with people, especially those that, like, you know, are maybe trying to move away from, you know, being strictly obsessed with, you know, how flat their stomach is, or, you know, like a lot of people know how big their ass might be, you know what I mean? So they can really get into, especially find maybe more so now for my female clients, especially, they're really enjoying the fact that it's something that they can post on Instagram that isn't just all about how good they look. They can say, well, damn, I'm actually pretty strong too. You know what I mean? And they get a lot of, like, and I think there's a good support network in powerlifting, especially here, because it is still quite small. I find that anyone I've brought in immediately gets like absorbed into this community, and everyone, you know, wants to get to know them or give them feedback or help them, or, you know, otherwise be like, I think there's just that commonality of, you know, working in on each other's bench or sharing a rack or sharing a platform. And I think that's a really cool idea. I like the community aspect of it too. I'm probably off on a tangent here, boys, so feel free to rein it back in.
That's okay. Yeah, I suppose the community aspect is huge, isn't it? Because you, like, from an outsider's perspective, you would think that powerlifting is really individual, like, you know, because it's just you on the platform doing your weight. Whereas, like, definitely, like, if you're in somewhere like Abs, who, like, I think at this stage we should be getting some kind of sponsorship from Abs, considering how often we mention them on the podcast. So Jay, if you're listening, free membership, please. But yeah, like if you're in somewhere like Abs, like the community aspect is like insane. Like you know, the big guys like Jake, who's like, you know, one of the strongest powerlifters in the country, all the way down to like the lighter girls who are like 47 kilos, or like people who are just walking in the door on their first day. Like everybody gets treated with pretty much the exact same respect, and like, you know, everybody gets critiqued on their lifts, like whether you be where you have like a fucking gold medal like Barry Piggott in like the bench press, or if you're just somebody who's, again, just on their first day, you're going to get critiqued the exact same and supported the exact same.
But it's just talking to other powerlifters kind of at other meets and around the country, that kind of community aspect seems to be synonymous with powerlifting. It's like, obviously Abs is a great club, but it is consistent. It is consistent throughout. Like the I started powerlifting in a little kind of an alleyway in Limerick. It's a gym in an alleyway, Patrick's Powerlifting Club. Great community, like great bunch of lads down there, really supportive. City gym in Limerick. There's another Studio One or Urban.
Studio One, that's right, yeah. Urban Barbell as well. I think maybe are they the same guys?
Yeah,
Did
same
they
place.
change that name? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's Ian's gym. Ian Benson.
I think if somebody was to listen to this and they were kind of like on the fence of like, oh fuck it, I do meet, like, just join a club.
100%, man.
It doesn't make a difference where it is. Just expose yourself to some coaching. Like, look, if you meet a coach and they're shit, that's still a learning outcome. Like, you're still learning something. But my experience generally is that if you have a coach and they care, I've been quite lucky with the coaches I've had so far. I've been coached by Dav and Eamon Harford. Most coaches that will get involved are trying to help, and they're generally pretty good as well. So I mean, it doesn't matter if it's Abs or I don't know, Odyssey or City Gym or anywhere. It doesn't matter where it is really. Like, as long as you're within the club, you will definitely get pulled into the black hole that is powerlifting. Because like,
sure, like you're right there. Like, with everything you just said, like with all the different places, like there's so many clubs in Ireland now. And Shane and I were talking previously. One thing I like about, I know Shane, we've trained together and things like that. Like, I know how high of a caliber of trainer he is, that it's very easy for me to refer people to him for like online coaching. I know like the guys across in Odyssey are quite a high standard of online coaching too, for powerlifting specifically. So if somebody were to come to me and say, I'm looking for an online powerlifting coach, I would be more inclined to send them to somewhere like that. Whereas then you've got places like City Gym, for example, have their own like gimmick. They've got like the yurt thing, you know what I mean? That's so cool. Like that they've got the, you know, the guys have this camaraderie and this like the amp up thing, you know what I mean? That's cool, you know what I mean? I think once before, it might have been actually Jerkules, somebody made a meme of it online of the different entrances. I think it was Strength Militia was Cyndi Lauper coming, like, as if it was pro wrestling. This is what resonated with me. City Gym was like the Ultimate Warrior, and Abs was the Undertaker. Like, just how people walk to the platform and things like that. And it's just even like that, things like that. It's cool that each club kind of has its own little niche or like identity. But ultimately, like, I know myself from being in Flyefit or any commercial gym I'm in, there's actually a guy I know from a gym down in Balbriggan named Reese Manning, the Compound King, who I believe Shane used to train there too, actually. The only real connection I have to him is that I think once I walked in and I was putting on a pair of SBD knee sleeves, and he came over and just started chatting to me because he was another powerlifter. So we just started talking shit, and he's a really cool guy, you know? So I like that. And same now, I'm the same thing. If I spot somebody in SBD knee sleeves, I might go over and be like, hey, do you need any chalk? You know what I mean? You know, we've got an Alico bar down here, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to, you've got that instantaneous connection with people you don't even know, or you might know them peripherally through Instagram. But yeah, I really love that, you know?
Oh, I totally agree with you. It's something I'm always like, I did my first powerlifting meet maybe like 2 years ago. But like I'm saying, like, anybody that is anyway interested in lifting and a little bit competitive, I would always say to them, just do a meet. just feel the buzz of your name being called. It's there is nothing like it, and going out and you're amped up, and no, like that is, I think it's one of the most beautiful things about powerlifting. Nobody wants to see you fail lift. Nobody wants to see you get hurt. Like, it is, everybody within the realm of powerlifting will say the same thing, that like, if you're at a meet, it doesn't matter who is in the platform, you want to see them get the lift. You want to see, it's nearly like we're all in the Coliseum and the gladiators down there and we're all cheering on. Like, it's just a real like tribal thing about it that I love. And like, I've had a lot of friends that like have done meets that have gone to college with or whatever, and they never competed again. They did a meet, said they loved it, kind of fell out of training for different reasons, but even years later, they'll still talk about that meet and the thrill of it. So even just as a bucket list thing to do, I do think it's a great thing to just try.
You'll see, you're dead right there, because you'll see people in an audience give, whether it's Jake Brennan squatting 420 kilos, and they'll give everyone be shouting from, but by the same token, you could have, a 17-year-old kid in there doing their third bench press, and it might not be a massive amount of weight, but if people see them genuinely trying, they're going to amp them up, they're going to get them going, and they're going to cheer,
It's like everybody just collectively forgetting that this person wants to lift the weight. Like,
you're just trying to willpower for them,
the collective will. Absolutely, it's like mass. It is genuinely like the priest rings the bell and everybody gives the same response. There's this weird collective unconscious going on, like that everybody just follows these norms. So one thing Shane definitely said earlier that I kind of thought was really relevant to talk about is you've gone from being just pro wrestler, jumping around the place, battering lads in tights, to pro level powerlifter in a relatively short period of time. So what was your kind of, obviously you were training and you did the meets, but what was it that kind of facilitated that happening? Was it just that you were like, right, I'm all in on this and I'm just going to try and get as good as I can? Or was it just kind of a coincidental kind of thing?
So we touched on it briefly earlier about how I had a little bit of a performance drop off between my first and my second meet. Like, when I went into my first meet, I genuinely believe I went in with the correct mindset. I wasn't necessarily going in to, try and break any records. I definitely wanted to put in a good performance. I missed my third bench, but other than that, I was really happy with how everything went. I did get a small PB on my squat, which I was happy about, but I was quite reserved on my bench overall and my third on deadlift. So between that meet and the second meet, between the second and third meet, I did become, like we've spoken about, very everything together between understanding that, okay, I understand that there's a certain amount of fatigue at these movements as a skill, and practice the skill. So became super like dialed in on that, got down to abs more regularly, which was obviously vital. This is what I'll say to anyone who is listening, who is peripherally flirting with the idea of either hiring a coach or joining powerlifting or anything. Just do it. It changes so much about what you do. There were so many things on this program. When I started, I was like, that's stupid. Why is that in there? I don't like doing this move. And just by putting the head down and doing it, I'm like, okay, I see. And there's so many more things. When you stand out of your own, wind tunnel of greatness, you can start to see other people actually do know their stuff, especially as a trainer. You know what I mean? I've always tried to not really have an ego about myself. I'll ask everyone for help. But I suppose I was very much saying that I needed to put myself in the hands of these guys that have had this experience. So became very process oriented between meet 2 and 3, and it paid dividends big time in a massively improved performance. I think that was abs series 3 then. So between 3 and then now up to all the way to abs 6, going into abs 4, I guess I had my small rivalry with Shane, which was good fun. And then honestly, the biggest impact for me was I'd imagine indirectly everything that was going on with lockdowns probably meant I was recovering better, I guess, but also just the ability to what's the best way to phrase this? I would not take no for an answer with training. I made sure I had enough equipment. I spent a lot of money to get a combo rack, to get a lot of steel plates, which actually I believe Lauren is one of our first conversations. You were going to steal it from me. Actually, we were talking over bench press. So by making sure I could maintain a degree of training, and then as soon as abs was open again, making sure we were there for our deadlift and squat sessions, and like that, just getting down and listening to the guys on things that, you know, may have challenged my belief system, but by just listening, I actually did learn a lot. And then becoming more into the process of, okay, not only how do I become better, but how would I go about coaching people, and surrounding myself with people that wanted to get better as well. And I think that's the biggest thing, is having people around you that are constantly pushing too. And I suppose there's an element of it there that I don't like the word lucky, but I guess I'm lucky that I obviously took really, really well to this type of training. I've been training on a barbell to some degree for about 10 years, maybe a little more. And I just happened to get quite good at these things, you know? So there's that element too. But, and then as mentioned, just becoming super process orientated. And then I have to give credit where credit is due. I followed the program through iteration and finding out how I should use that program versus somebody who's like 20 kilos lighter than me, or somebody who's 20 kilos heavier than me, or younger than me, or older than me, or whatever. Like learning how it works for me and around how I excel or where I should pull back, that was massive for me. And that was through a lot of guidance from the likes of Jay himself, David S, as I mentioned earlier, and then a lot of the other lifters there. Just having them look at your set, being honest with you. Was it good? Was it awful? What could you do different? What could you improve on? Should you, you know, it can be a myriad of things, as I'm sure you know. Oh, your elbow flared out a little bit on that bench, or you extended a little bit faster your knees coming out of that squat. You know what I mean? So certain things like that, even down to like, this is actually a big one, and I'll actually credit Shane for about accessory work. And I just asked him what he did for accessories, and he just basically broke it down that he had it as the gym and just beating the shit out of my biceps or my shoulders, or just doing something to add up junk volume basically. And I could see that he was quite, as he mentioned, he had a bit of purpose with it. He had a process to use these as tools to what he was doing elsewhere in the program. So by adopting a similar idea, so to take the number of things I was doing down a little bit, focus on those and use them as a method of progression as well. That's huge. That was a big one. So my work capacity got better. I definitely got a bit more jacked. And I think just by doing those things and then letting I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. By looking at the squat, the bench, and the deadlift as the movements, and then letting myself kind of, work on I suppose the volume or intensity through the rest of the program, and not feeling like I needed to break a record every single time I came into the gym, it ultimately led to better peak, which led to better performance on the day. That's a bit of a diatribe now, lads, but that is pretty much the whole thing. Edit that however you need to, Shane.
I won't be editing that. No, that was brilliant.
Well, thanks, guys.
So just for somebody at home, or rather disabled the hassle of looking up fucking Ian Grant and open powerlifting and scroll names, right? Give the people what they want. Tell them your first total and what's your most recent total.
So in my very first comp, I finished about it was either 645 or 647.5 in total. And then most recently I finished on 750. So that's about almost to the day 2 years, and I've put on about 100 kilos on the total.
Pretty good.
All right.
I'm happy with it.
Solid.
It's pretty decent. Like,
so what's so that's 2 years. What's the pipe dream as regards the number?
Do you know,
let's say even just for series 7, what's kind of the hope?
What I'd love to do is, my goal, my deadlift had been stalled for the longest time. And I definitely feel like this iteration of the program, either whatever way it was done or whatever way I went about executing it, I think the trick was I wasn't like, trying to blow my load on pause deadlifts one day and trap bar deadlifts another day. I was leaving most of the intensity for that one heavy Thursday and focusing on good quality movement and good quality. We had a couple of singles in there along the way with a little bit of volume. So focused on, hitting some nice sub maxes, but just exposing myself to the load. So the big goal was I definitely want to break, which at the time was my 1 rep max, which was 285. So in training, I pulled 290 about 4 weeks out and it moved really, really well. I sent it to Jay and he said, looks good for a second if you want to try 300 for the third. And that wasn't really in the ballpark for me at that stage. I had actually missed 290 at Ab Series 5, I believe. This is my third attempt and I missed it. So for me, if I had just gone into the comp and locked in 290 on the platform, that would have been massive for me. So on the day, I went in and on my second, I took 290 and it moved really well. So I said to my handler, Vincent Chung, another great powerlifter, one of my best mates and another trainer who's been... I can't value his help enough. He's wrapped my knees. He's gotten me water and coffee and, just babysat me in the back while I'm being a prima donna, So great guy. He's going to do tremendous now at the next meet as well. I can see him getting from Division 2 up to Division 1. But anyway, so like I said to Vinny, put in 300 for the third. I went out, I pulled it, it came up. It actually was surprisingly not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. And I've never really gotten like super emotional about lifting. Another member of Abs once said I was the most relaxed person in the back because I was just chilling on a couch. This was in old Abs. I was just sitting down, chilling on the couch, waiting for my attempts to come because I was honestly bollocks at that stage of the day, really, really tired. But she was like, Jesus, you're the most relaxed person here. Everyone else is like stomping around. So, and don't worry, I am getting to the point here. So went out, pulled it. Was like actually super amped after it, super happy and a teeny little bit emotional. I'm a little reluctant to admit, but I was actually like, I can't believe I'm that guy that did that could do that weight. So next week, the following week, I was in Abs and I went over and I looked at the board for the 105 category, which is I am currently fat enough to be in. So it was, I believe it's Barry Piggott has pulled 310. So I asked Jay, I said, if I want to get on that board, do I have to pull the same weight at a lower body weight or pull more weight? And he went, nah, can I swear on this or is that all right?
Oh, fucking blind all you want.
So he said, fuck that, pull 312.5. So tentatively, I would love to do that. Not to beat Barry, because I have a lot of respect for Barry, but I want my name on that fucking board. Just one time. Even if it's only for a couple of months, I want to fucking do it. I want to go in and take the picture, put it on Instagram and say, that's it. I've done it. I'm fucking up there,
Completed, mate.
Exactly. That's it. Like I suppose and that's the point. And I suppose I would say this to anyone that even if they're getting into powerlifting and they're looking at that board, if you're fresh in the door or even if you're a somewhat seasoned athlete or someone who's done a meet or two, or you're going into your first meet, looking at that board and you'll find your weight category and look down and say, oh shit. But it's just true for me anyway, just through sheer relentless effort, I've managed to get myself within spitting distance of getting my name up there. So if I can do that, that will be a massive achievement for me personally. And that's completely outside of winning competitions or winning categories or trophies or anything. That's just that's a victory in my little race I'm running with myself,
No, I think I could definitely see how that'd be hugely motivating because it is. I remember the first time I walked in, and like I'm 120 odd, and like you're standing there and you're just looking up and you're kind of shaking your head. You're like, Jesus fucking Christ! Like, and what's really demoralizing when you actually go in and you look at the bench. And you just see Barry. You're just sitting there like this fucking cunt. But like it's a board that like if you like the West Side board, it's just if you want to be one of the heavy hitters, that's the board to get on. So for you then, like how did powerlifting affect your kind of coaching or your outlook on coaching?
It's actually like the Abs program initially kind of woke me up to how differently programs could potentially run. And it made me take a step back and look at what maybe I should change in order of priority for who I'm training. So the whole gimmick, the Iron Ian thing was about, initially it was about tough training based around the likes of barbell work. So by getting into powerlifting, it kind of like reinforced that. So people kind of know what they get when they come to me. So the biggest thing it changed for me, firstly, is I think trainers have like an innate fear of letting clients go heavy. I say with air quotes, because heavy is relative. So by getting into this style of training, becoming much more acquainted with the likes of RPE or reps in reserve, and utilizing that style with clients. And, you know, to some clients, they like using things like percentages as an estimate and things like that. Just getting more into that aspect. And it actually wakes people up to say, oh, damn, like I'm actually way stronger than I thought I was. Like one of the clients I train is she's a lady in her 50s. She's a nurse in Vincent's, and it's the only thing she came to me for. She said, I want you to teach me how to squat and deadlift. And as you can imagine, that's one of the best things I could ever hear. So for her, the ability to come in and squat like a barbell with 5 kilos on either side is monumental, because she never thought she could do that. And I think powerlifting, I was always a decent squatter, but being more exposed to it myself, coaching more people to do it, and being more invested in the process of being good at it or learning how to address certain issues in it, that has made that, I think, is what facilitated me getting this lady from barely being able to do a goblet squat with her heels up on a plate and every other counterbalance you can imagine to try and facilitate the movement, to where she can comfortably walk in a gym now and squat a couple of kilos comfortably. And she's actually turned into a bit of a monster on the deadlift. Again, as I mentioned, very, very, if people know what training age is, her training age is basically maybe less than a year, maybe now, but I suppose with the lockdowns and things like that, maybe it's a little less. So she, her training age is quite young, and she's still repping 90 kilos on the deadlift for a couple of reps. So I'm pretty happy with her performance overall, especially as a lady that just wanted to just be good at those two things. She's now become proficient at a whole heap of things that I'm not sure I would have taught to prioritize without seeing what powerlifting can do for people, and that people are actually way more robust than I think sometimes we give them credit for.
Sure, you'll have to get her to enter into her first ab series. She's
I think there is a little debate there, man. I think she would think about it for sure.
Yeah, definitely would be. How many clients have you gotten to compete in competitions thus far?
I have, let me see, 2 girls competed at the last comp. And then I've 2 competing at the next one. One of the ones did the last one, and one new girl who's doing one as well. The Ab Series 7's in aid of Breast Cancer Ireland. So one of the girls feels very strongly about that. So she's jumping in for that, but I can definitely see her sticking around through it for the next little while. Then initially, there's a coach that used to work in Flyefit. Now he's doing his own thing at the moment, named Evan Wallace. He was not initially training with abs, and I was exposing him to powerlifting and helped him a lot through his first prep, I suppose. And that was my, I suppose, first, I wouldn't really say client, I guess that's unfair, but he was somebody I helped coach through the process. And then same with Vincent Chung, who's competed twice now. This most recent competition, I was his handler. He's my training partner, so I would have had a very big investment in his process. And then Mario Morelli, who's won Division 1 actually at the most recent competition, he's been a long-time training partner of mine. Wouldn't have had as much involvement in his coaching at all, but definitely on his meet day handling, he put a lot of trust in me to help him on that day. So I definitely got a good bit of exposure to a wide variety of athletes on that. So I suppose, to your question, 2 have definitely done it, and a third one is doing it at the next one.
Curious about there, if you're kind of talking about introducing people to powerlifting, what's kind of using the words you could say to someone?
You read my mind.
Like if you were to just say, just do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, what would you say to them?
If I was introducing somebody to powerlifting, initially, I suppose the most important thing is do train the movements we're obviously trying to be good at. Do hire a damn coach who can, like, powerlifting is, I suppose it can just train as normal and then go and compete, but it's better to do that under the guidance of somebody who's either been there themselves or has a sufficient base of knowledge to help you get there. Do become process orientated and plan your way to the meet you're going to do, and pick a meet that is of reasonable repute and standard, preferably, but just get in there, get on the platform and have fun. That's the most important thing. Have fun. The don'ts would be don't worry about your weight. You don't need to diet into a competition. You don't need to cut water. Leave that to the pros. Leave that to the guys that are, you know, competing for something other than the joy of competing. You know, you don't need to test your 1 rep maxes in the gym prior and then go and do that on the day. And then on the day, I actually, you know, I tell a lie. I completely forgot about one guy I coached who is actually another PT named Jacob, who on the lead up, I wasn't sure how he was going to do because he got a little bit sick prior to the comp, but he went in and nailed his 9 for 9 and just did everything textbook. Brilliantly executed everything. He just hit that sweet spot on the third attempt with the squat and the bench that left him with enough in the tank to get a nice, tasty little PB on his deadlift. So he did super well. He is now actually building all the way up to the November comp, actually. But that he took the advice on the day to not so much worry about, you know, walking out on the platform and the first thing you need to do is a 10 kilo PB. He understood that, you know, an opener is to get used to being out there, get your commands. A second attempt is maybe this time you'll actually feel the weight because the first time you were all up in your head and you don't even remember being on the platform. And maybe if all's going well, on the third, you'll go out there and take a PB, which would be great. So again, just to quickly recap some of those, the do's will be get a coach, start learning the movements, getting used to the commands, probably invest in some of the equipment though. I'm sure there's a good thing about powerlifting. Everyone's really, really generous. So people will be happy to lend you probably one of their myriad of knee sleeves. I don't know about you guys, but I have like 4 pairs of knee sleeves at the moment. So that can all be taken care of. Sign up to me, work towards it. Don't worry about your weight. Don't worry about weight classes. It doesn't matter. It really, really, really doesn't matter. I can't stress that enough because I made that mistake a little bit between my first and second comp. My first one, I was 93.5. My second one, I was 91.3 or something like that. So I cut about 2 kilos between April and August. And as I mentioned, my competition did not go incredibly well. So cutting weight is definitely not something I would recommend. There's no need for it. It's a performance-based sporting outlet. So focus on having a good day and a good performance. And then one that a lot of people say is don't try change anything drastic about your food as you go into meet day. But I guess that's skipping ahead a little bit. And then ultimately enjoy the fact that it's a massive amount of camaraderie. Like I can't stress that enough. The way I actually tend to get people to come with me and come powerlifting isn't by me trying to convince them. It's they see me training and they see that I'm training with other people, and then they come over and they go, "What are we doing today, lads? What's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, well, we're squatting and we're doing this." And they have kind of jump in for a couple of things, and you know, they start to enjoy it and they ask about the program, and then you know, I might give them a little peek at the program, and so they'll start doing that, and then they're like, "What's the crack with these knee sleeves, boys? Do I need to get a pair of them?" You know what I mean? And then it's just a natural process, and then it's, you know, what time you training this day, and oh, you're going to squat on Sunday. Oh, great. Can I come down? You know what I mean? And it all just leads into them saying, you know, do you think I should do a competition? And lo and behold, their name's on the sheet. You know what I mean? It's a great natural process. You love to see it.
Like a gateway drug into powerlifting.
It is, though, for sure, man.
Like I have you click on one YouTube video when you're 17, and the next thing you know, you've 10 years have passed, and you're and you're head over arse in the sport. No, but there's some really like clear, concise points that people can take away, I think, because while a lot of what myself and Shane do would probably cater to people that are maybe at the, say, intermediate to latter stages of maybe advancement in powerlifting, I think just the basic thing of like somebody that's toying with the idea of doing a meet. I think it's unless they're in that kind of club environment or that kind of clique, it's kind of hard to suss out what you need to do and what you need to avoid. I know for me, like when I was doing my first meet, I've a close friend, Sean Hawk, that does powerlifting, and I was just like going off everything he was saying. No, like he gave me some really, really solid advice, but like that, it's kind of, powerlifting is one of those sports where like I think most people that are involved in it, you just have your like powerlifting friends. Mm-hmm. So you have like your maybe your friend group from school or your friend group from college or whatever, and then you have your powerlifting friends. So like you're nearly like fucking Batman, the two or Spider-Man. But it's really immersive, and I think it's like a relatively healthy thing to get really stuck into, because like for the likes of yourself and Shane, you've managed to turn lifting into a career, and it's something that can give you a lot of meaning and can give your life something to reach for, that isn't just some kind of arbitrary goal. But for a lot of young lads or young people, young teenagers, I think even just if they fall out of organised team sports, like I think we're slowly seeing a lot of teens get involved in powerlifting, which is nice to see. Like you've the ABS junior competition, which Joe was just gone. There was some absolutely freaky bastards in that, but the ABS teen is coming up now in Series 7, I think.
That's right.
I think that'll be exciting to see. I think like that's like I'm excited to see the pro, like obviously the pro am, but I mean seeing like what could turn up in terms of like the potential for years down the line. That I would be really excited to see, and see these are the future stars of the sport, or these are the guys and girls that we're going to be talking about when we're all three of us are grey and miserable and broken up and retired, and be talking about their lives. So yeah, I think I think powerlifting's headed in a really good direction, and I think you've kind of elucidated as to a lot of the reasons why that is. But that's pretty much everything, lads, is it?
Yeah, seems like a good place as any to wrap up. Any closing thoughts, Ian?
Well, to be honest, if you just left me go, I would literally sit here and talk for the rest of the evening, so I won't hold you up too long. However, I will say, based on what Lawrence is saying there, I definitely agree. The surge in participation by junior athletes, I would be guilty sometimes of saying I think sometimes clubs can over-focus on juniors because naturally they're super strong, they have loads of potential and years of mileage in front of them. But I've since started to look at so my counter argument to that would have usually been, yeah, but like, you know, they could get a job or go to college, or, you know, get pregnant or move country or just fall out of love with the sport. So I think, you know, especially when people are young, they tend to, you know, a year to you or me may not be the same as somebody who's 17. You know what I mean? So what they love between September and April can be something completely different come August, the next September. However, like Lawrence has pointed out, I think giving younger people an outlet that is it's such a positive thing to firstly take their focus off strictly what they look like, showing them that they're actually super strong and capable, robust, and, you know, gritty people. I think that can have transfer to other parts of your life, which I don't know about you guys, but I certainly definitely feel like if I can survive the abs bench peak, I can survive a lot of things. So that's definitely how I feel about that one. But for the young guys and girls, even if, like you said, you got friends that Lawrence's friends there that did powerlifting meets years ago, and maybe did it one time, but they still talk about it to this day. So I think especially if you're a younger guy or a younger girl, and if you are involved in powerlifting, fair play to you, because it's a great thing and it's great to see the sport grow, and the more participation, the better. But if you're considering it, I would look at, you know, you might do it for 2 or 3 or 4 years, but you will always have this foundation that if you ever decide you want to go back to training or you want to try something else, you've had this really solid base put under you. You build a great community of people around you that, you know, I've met friends that, you know, like I mentioned, Reese Manning earlier on, he doesn't really powerlift anymore, but I'd still keep in touch with the guy, you know what I mean? He's doing great things now as well. So I definitely think there's that element that you might miss otherwise, especially in the current times as a younger person, because the social interaction has been limited. Like, I love to see the fact that like clubs always celebrate their athletes' wins online. You know what I mean? Every time, like if somebody does something good, they'll always celebrate the win. So yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying. Like, I think I'm really happy to see where this is going, and it's great to see that it only every year I've been in it, for the brief time I have been, things have gotten better. Even through all this, have gotten way, way better. So it's great to see, and it gives me opportunities like this to talk to you guys. And, you know, you guys are both smart guys. You're both well trained. good looking men. You know, it's great to see, and it's great to have the opportunity to come on and chat to you here for sure.
No, we definitely are heading towards like the golden times of we're living in arguably the golden age of powerlifting in Ireland. Like I think that largely is down to like a lot of what like you said earlier, that kind of community thing. I think ABS, like the club, Jay, just the investment in powerlifting, at an individual, but at a kind of a club level as well, has done a lot. Like, it's probably no coincidence that the club that is ABS and kind of it's expanding for a reason, and powerlifting is getting the likes of us and a younger crew drawn in. So it'll be fun times to see. Like, arguably, like Jake just totaled 1,000, which has never been done before in Ireland, and I do.
Incredible.
I was gonna say it's so accessible now. Like, I suppose beforehand, like powerlifting, I remember when I started lifting, if you knew somebody who was doing powerlifting, like that was like extremely fringe. Whereas it's like mainstream now. So I don't know if it's cool anymore either, because of mainstream. But it's a really good opportunity for people who have never even been afforded the opportunity to be involved in organized sport to actually get into it. Because, like, say for example, like, well, I'm 27 now. If I just decide, right, I want to join a football club, like, joining a random football club is like, that's a huge skill set for me to try to develop. And, like, you know, being a beginner as, like, you know, joining the local football team. Like, you may never see time in the field ever. You might just always be the guy who has to do the shitty job of training or whatever and fill up the water bottles. Whereas, at least if you've never been involved in organized sport, this gives you an opportunity to kind of train around people who are in kind of higher positions than you, but you're going to be treated with the same level of respect, and you're gone on the skill set that you have to develop. Like, I mean, as you mentioned, Ian, squat, bench, and deadlift, pretty easy to kind of get good at over time. Like, you know, once your kind of technique is pretty solid, you just need to get stronger, you know, whereas in other sports, there's so many different things that you have to be good at. Like, so, yeah, so that's my 2 cents.
I think the access thing is largely down to the fact that, like, all you need is, like, let's say Fado in powerlifting, like, you would have had it mainly equipped, and equipped powerlifting was kind of the mainstay of powerlifting, where you need, for anybody who doesn't know, a squat suit, potentially briefs, bench shirt, and a deadlift suit, all to lift in. And if anybody doesn't know, like, you're racking up, even in single ply gear, which is substantially cheaper than multiply, you're still racking up probably a 12 or 1,300 euro bill just to get started. And that's if, you know, you're buying, that's not even top of the range, your Porsche or Ferrari lifting equipment there. So I think kind of like raw lifting, just like you said earlier there, just looking at someone in a pair of sleeves and a belt, that's all you need, and a gym membership, and there's not much else that's required. Whereas maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, you needed to be training in a powerlifting gym with all that gear. Pretty difficult to walk out multiply squats as well. So you probably need to train in the gym with a monolift. You know, all of these things were acting as barriers, and they've just kind of faded away, thankfully.
Well, even down to like just for things like this, you did mention like we are kind of in that golden age, especially here in Ireland for sure. There's a massive uptake in interest. Like, you know, even like as I mentioned to you guys beforehand, like I really enjoy your podcast. I listen to it every Friday while I'm training. And but between yourselves, and I know the Odyssey guys have a podcast, No Lift podcast is out there. The fact that there is this even demand for something like this, you know, people want to listen to this content, you know what I mean? It's showing that there is a growing interest in doing sports outside of kicking the ball around the field, whether that is something like strongman, CrossFit, or powerlifting. You know, when people think of sports related to the gym, they're not strictly thinking of bodybuilding anymore. They actually are starting to branch out, and seeing more people, as I mentioned before, seeing more people actually go to the gym, whether it's powerlifting or not, and try their squats or their bench or their deadlift. More and more people now, compared to when I first started, are training more towards this end and prioritizing things like being stronger or fitter. And that's amazing to see. Like, so I think just the fact that there is demand for this type of content, be it here, the likes of YouTube and even Instagram pages and things like that, like, I think is indicative that there is a bit of a shift and people are way more interested in that performance-based training, or something that they can practically see improvement over time, and something as static as numbers on a bar. So, you know, I think that's a massive thing for me, and for I'm sure a lot of the people listening. But lads, I will probably stop there, because as I said, I will just keep going for another hour, and you'll have the longest episode ever. It'll be a nightmare for Shane to edit them.
Shane is going to have a heart attack trying to edit the next 2 words.
We'll be okay. We'll be okay. I got today's one done in record time, so I'm getting better. Right, I suppose we'll wrap up there. So Ian, do you want to just tell people where they can find you if they want to contact you?
Absolutely. So I am across on Instagram and most platforms at Iron Ian PT. On Instagram, I will occasionally throw up like question boxes and things like that if you want to engage, and I'll usually record videos, and I will probably post about 100 stories a day, or I'll do an IGTV. Occasionally I'll throw something up on YouTube there as well. That is the bulk of the places you'll find my content, and you will have to listen to me rant about a wide variety of topics. But yeah, so those would be the main ones. At RNEPT, Instagram will probably be the good filter into everything else.
Deadly.
Unreal. Cool. Grand. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. So just make sure that whatever kind of platform listening to this on, that you either leave a review, give us a rating, like it, follow it, subscribe, whatever the fucking option is, share it on social media, that kind of stuff. And yeah, thank you very much. We will catch you in the next one.